Welcome those joining the session. We're going to give the rest of the participants a few minutes to join, connect, and we'll get started. If you kindly can confirm if you can see my screen over the chat or Q&A section, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, we'll get started in 2 minutes. All right, perfect. I see that the inflow has stopped, so let's get started. My name is Gabriel Seng. I'm product specialist here at Techdinamics, and today we want to share a webinar into how to manage returns efficiently, best practices for e-commerce businesses, okay? Peak season has already started. We have shared several webinars so far regarding how to get ready, how to set your TechSHIP environments up for different scenarios. So getting ready is a very important part. And even though we are halfway through the peak season, there's the peak season, the season finale, which is returns. Okay. After the whole typical wave of massive volume and additional work that we have and all that is through, right? We typically have several weeks after that, after the official peak season time, where returns are handled, right? People, for different reasons, return part of their items that they have received, either because they got them for themselves or because they got them from someone else. Okay. So today, first of all, I want to review return rates and costs before we jump into TechShip's features and how we can optimize your returns operations. It's important to see where we are in the course of the last few years. Okay, there has been a downtrend when it comes to returns in terms of two things: in terms of the rate percentage and in terms of the cost. Okay, this is a really costly part of industry, returns, where we're talking about over $500 billion a year across the whole industry. Okay, there are some trends which are really easy to spot when it comes to counting from 2020 onwards towards now. Okay, and that is obviously because in 2020, 2021, the pandemic spiked historically to the all-time high of online shipments, e-commerce, right? And by consequence, dragging the returns, the return rate statistic behind it, okay? Volumes were absolutely insane. Everyone can remember. And obviously, with insane volumes, you're going to have an insane amount of returns. But throughout the years, the return rate has been downtrending, okay, for different reasons. There are economical reasons behind it. There are other elements related to optimizing the way shipments are handled in a more intelligent, less prone to error way, okay, with different tools and processes. But well, this is reality. It's luckily downtrending, okay? Now, the fact that it's downtrending doesn't mean that everything is fine, right? Um, Last year's statistics pointed out that there was about 12% returns of every shipment. So every 10 shipments, one gets returned. Out of nine, one gets returned. Sorry, out of 10, one gets returned. And if you count that in money, that's still a lot. There were spikes in terms of costs in 2021, 2022. And just in 2023, the costs for this went a little bit lower than the pandemic in 2020. But still, it's a lot. There's a lot of money to save by efficiently shipping. And it's also important to quantify how how returns impact your costs within the warehouse. Okay, but the fact that you have a leak at home doesn't mean that don't have to pay for water. So it's important to see how you address it, how you can avoid it, obviously, which is not the purpose of this webinar. We have talked about this in the last few webinars. But once you have to face that 10 or 12% average returns of what you've shipped in peak season, how you can get on your feet as fast as you can and in the most efficient way. Okay, the uptrend that has been seen within the realm of returns is optimization at the time of shipping, so that impacts as a downtrend in terms of the returns, but also optimization at the time of handling the returns. TechSHIP has improved its return tools in the last few years significantly. And there are several ways which we're going to review in this webinar of the tools and processes that you can put in place so you can handle this in the most efficient way as possible. Okay. So first of all, we need to understand how can return labels be printed in TechSHIP. Okay. These can be printed in three different ways. One of them is for every shipment, okay? Printing return labels for every shipment can be tied or strongly tied to a specific business scenario, okay? This might have a relation with peak season, or maybe you're just printing return labels for every shipment for a specific client because there has to be a return, right? It has to go back to the warehouse or back somewhere else, right? For example, medical tests um, or other medical related elements might require shipping to the customer's home and the customer returning a sample back to a location, right? So in that kind of case, it's I would say it's necessary. It's part of the business to have a return label for every shipment. Okay. In other cases, it can be a preemptive strategy of saying, well, we're going to send this return label. We have better rates if we do it on our own than if we handle everything one by one. So we're going to do it this way, right? But again, TechShip has the capability to print a return label for every shipment, with it obviously with an associated cost when you generate and print that return label, whether the customer uses it or not. That's why it's so important for you to review your base case scenarios to see if this is needed or not. Another way to print this is by doing it from process batches, okay? Once a return label has been generated, you can print it automatically as you print the batch, or if you need to return to the batch to print specifically return labels for whichever reason, you can do so from the process batch, okay? And then the other option, which is one of the improvements that has had the biggest positive impact when it comes to handling return labels through TechShip, is on demand per order. So instead of printing a return label for every shipment you have, with the cost associated to that, you're able within techSHIP to find a batch within your processed order history, okay? And through that batch's information, automatically generate a return label, okay? With the least amount of friction possible. Just a few clicks and you're good to go. We're going to see a practical example of these, all right? So those are the ways you can do it in techSHIP. Now, how can techSHIP optimize returns? Okay. So the core spirit behind optimizing returns in techSHIP is having less manual work at the time of doing so. Okay. Um, Even though it is valid to manually create an order for a return, and will produce the same result. Obviously, it takes much more time than to just say, well, I want a return label for this shipment I sent 2 weeks ago, right? It's just finding the original batch or order and requesting a return from the system for that. The system will create a separate batch. It's going to just require you to accept the beginning of the process and print, and you're good to go, okay? It even has less steps than importing an order. So the idea is that by having less manual work, you can use presets to save time for this. You can reduce human error because at the time of generating a return label manually, you're spending lots of time compared to a semi-automated process. But you're also prone to error, having typos, putting wrong information in there, incomplete information in terms of what's needed. It requires verification. It's a lot of work, and with a lot of work and manual and manual effort comes a lot of chances to make mistakes. So we can reduce human error by doing it the way we're going to show it today. And also another way to optimize it is by parting from um, existing data. It doesn't make sense to create a batch to return an order from scratch if we already know what the ship from or what the ship from address was, um, what the ship to address was, what phone numbers, email information, weight, dimensions. We already have all that. Why? Because we processed the order in first place. We already shipped it. So if it's coming back, it should come back the same way as it went in, right? It went out, sorry. So we can use part from the existing, we can part from the existing data to generate these returns and save as much time as possible. Okay. So, well, with this introduction to the business side, the technical side, and the features, let's do it. Let's get started. Okay. So over here, I have a regular order, just a basic order. It's a FedEx order. All right. We're going to check a few of the qualities, a few of the features, sorry, of this order. It's got a few references over here. It's shipping from a Canadian address to another Canadian address. Okay. But we have address one, phone number, city, state, postal, country, so on and so forth. Okay. When it comes to other features here, we don't have any accessorials. All right. When it comes to packaging, this is what we have, just 2 pounds. We're going basic on this. And then we have a few SKUs within it. Okay, so we have 1 item 2 and 3 item 1s. This is the content and nature of this order. Now, if I process this order as a regular order without any return settings whatsoever, what I'm going to do is process and print. In this case, I'm just going to process. I don't want to hit my printer with this request. But as we process the order, we're going to FedEx for a request to processing, and we get the results over here. Okay, we have a tracking number, we have the charge, we have well, the service that was used. If we click in the label here, we're going to keep this so we can review it later. We have all the information required. We have the ship from, we have the ship to, we have the service code here, references. Okay, we have the reference here. This is obviously hidden in the test API, so it says sample over here. And well, we got who paid for it, dimensions, weight over here, and we also have the ship date. So we're gonna keep this label here for review later, okay? Now, for me to produce return labels for every order, I need to make some changes in my billing account, okay? So over here, as you can see, this is the account that we're using. I'm going to view this account. I'm going to jump into the setup straight from the batch, so it's easier for us to access it. And we're going to review a couple of things, okay? Let's give it a while to load, and we'll be good to go. It's a little bit slow here on my side since I'm broadcasting, recording, and a few more things. So please be patient. It's going to take a few more seconds at your production environments, okay? There we go. Now, if I go to carrier options here and I scroll down a little bit, I'm going to find a return section, okay? This return section is the one that allows me to print return labels. If I choose to print return labels, if I check this box, TechSHIP is going to enable a few additional fields so I can point out how I want to handle the returns, okay? In this particular case, well, we're not going to do it from here, okay? We're going to keep it the other way and work with the batch as regular so we can create a manual return with the semi-automatic system, okay? But I just want to walk you through what you should do to print return labels for every shipment, okay? So first of all, we have to point out what's a return payment type. Who's going to pay for this, right? Is it going to be the sender? That's going to be us. Is it going to be a child account? It's going to be one or the other. Okay, so you choose the type over here and you define the account number. Okay, so typically in this case, if it would be sender, we're going to use the account number we have here. Okay, that's going to be how it's going to look like. We also have to point out the payer country, and we need to determine the service code that we're going to use with that return label. Typically, it is ground or ground home delivery, depending typically on where you're shipping to, okay? But doing it this way, for example, okay? And let's say you're just plain ground, all right? What's going to happen is that when I process the order here in the batch, I'm going to get my regular shipping label, and I'm also going to get a return label. In this particular case, paid by us, the sender, and also requesting a ground shipping label, okay? What that label is going to have is basically the same information, but the ship to and the ship from will be inverted, okay? Because it's being returned. It's coming from the destination and is going to the origin, okay? So these two will be swapped basically for that, okay? Obviously, this will have a different barcode and any other additional information related to the shipment in the nature of the original destination and the original origin, okay? Now, another element here which might be handy is overriding the return address. If you want to triangulate your returns, right? If you're not receiving the return as a warehouse, maybe you're shipping electronics, okay? That's one of the highest trends when it comes to returns, fashion, apparel, and electronics, okay? So say that you don't need to handle the returns. The customer, your client will say, well, we want you to store and ship these, okay? But if there's any issues with the items being shipped, if anyone receives a broken item, or if they just want to change it, whatever the case there is, if it's within warranty, so on and so forth, we want them to return this to an RMA center, okay? So they have their own support, technical support, and RMA center somewhere else. It's not going to come back to the warehouse, all right? So in that case, what we do is override return address, all right? Once you override return address, you have the capability of providing a name here. Let's say, for example, RMA center, SuperTech. Let's imagine that this is the company, okay? I'm just gonna I'm just gonna find a random address over here so we can ship it that way, okay? So copy me for a second. All right. It's gonna be still in Canada, but this is going out from as far as I remember. 2425 Matheson Avenue. This is in Mississauga. It's going to, let's check the order information again. It was going to Chilliwack, British Columbia. Okay. And when it's returned, it's going to return back to the Toronto area, but it's not going to the warehouse. It's going somewhere else. Okay. So let's say that this is going to Richmond Hill. Okay. Um, so let's get this address here. Address 1, Richmond Hill, Ontario. Postal code. There we go. We already have the country down there. All right. And we're good to go. Okay. So if I set this up this way and I save it, which we're going to do right now, we'll cross our fingers for it to work. All right. Because doing it on the fly, hopefully will work. Since we're hitting the test API, some things might be missing. But I believe it's going to work. So let's give it a while and let it process. Okay. Is going through, being processed. Perfect. Okay. Let's review what we got as labels. Okay. So over here we have two things. We have the shipping label, right? And we have the return label here. Okay. Now, if you realize, compared to the original label that we printed, okay, over here we have the warehouse address, right, as the ship from. Over here, the original, the shipping label, it's shipping from the warehouse, but the ship from in the label is the RMA center. Why? Because when the customer gets this label, the shipping label, and if they look at it, they're going to see, oh, but why is it coming? If I bought from SuperTech, why is it coming from somewhere else, right? So over here, we are overriding this return address, showing the ship from. The induction address is still the warehouse, and we got the ship to. And if we take a look at the return label, okay, it does say return, so it's super clear which one is which, okay? Obviously, we have different services because the original shipping label was FedEx Express, but the return one, since we chose it, is FedEx Ground now, okay? And as you can see over here, the ship from is the customer's address, and the ship to is the RMA center. Okay, so everything is in place. But here's the deal: if we do it this way, every single shipment that we process through this account will produce a return label, and will produce the additional costs associated with the return label, right? So if that's the case, we gotta get ready to pay a little bit more per shipment. Okay, if it's part of the business, it's part of the business. It's part of the rules of the game. But if it's not, this is something that you don't want to do. Okay, otherwise you'll be spending a lot of money for no reason. Now, if you do want to handle that 10-12% on a order by order basis, when it applies to the case, you can perfectly do so. You're going to reduce your shipping costs when it comes to returns drastically, okay? Because you won't be just blind shooting a whole bunch of return labels just in case the customer needs to use them. But you're going to actually generate a return label based on the users that do request a return, okay? Regardless if you use this or not, if you have this feature turned on or not, return labels, which I'm going to turn off right now so we can have the whole the full regular scenario handled again, okay, without generating this automatic return label. Okay, so I'm going to save it this way. It's back to a normal regular shipping account without generating return labels. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to create this manual return for customers that do request it on demand. Now, just an additional element here, if you need to reprint the return label, okay, you can either choose to select this section and reprint the labels here, or you can download the labels, whichever set you like, so you can print them separately. Okay, for example, here you'll find an option for download pre-generated return label. Because in this case, if you reprint labels, again, you'll be 100% more wasteful because you're printing two labels, but you only need one. Okay, if you reprint all the labels, right? Now, if you do it from here, it's like, oh, okay, the return label, it got broken, it got lost, it got, I don't know, ripped, something went on, the customer can't find it, whatever the case that is. Then you can say, okay, let's download the pre-generated return label. When you download it this way, what's interesting is that as you do it, let's do return, okay? As you do it, what you can do here is send this label via email. So you don't need to print it ahead of time. You can just send it to the customer so they can print it on their end, okay? This capability will save you lots of printing costs, okay? And at the same time, it's going to save you a lot of work because you don't need to print this, you don't need to handle this at all. You can just reach the customer that does need one of these via email. Okay, it's like, okay, here's your return label, instructions to print it, you're good to go. You handle it on your end, you stick it to the box and send it to RMA SuperTech RMA Center, and you're good to go. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now, having dealt with the first two scenarios, is void this over here. Okay, I'm going to discard this double set of labels, shipping and returns, and I'm going to process again under the original setup of this account, which is a regular shipping scenario. Okay, so let's give it a few seconds for it to process. Again, we're going to review the label to make sure that everything is back in place. So good, we're not going to show RMA center or anything like that here. And I got the ship to properly handled. This is FedEx Express. Okay, everything is fine. So what if we get, let's say that we have this order, we're gonna keep the pick order number, customer order number, it can also be helpful, but I'm gonna use the pick order number. You can also use the tracking number as well. But let's imagine that we go back to our regular dealings within the day, right? We already shipped that order. It's been 1, 2, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks. And then we get an email from the customer. They're saying, oh, we need a return label for this particular shipment that you shipped 2 weeks ago. Okay. It was a tablet. It was defective. It doesn't charge, right? So the customer needs to return it to our RMA center to see what they do with it. Okay. Now, you're already focused on the last on the last 2 weeks and everything that happened. You probably don't even remember shipping that box. But the thing is that within that request from your customers, there's surely a pick order number, a customer order number, there's a tracking number, whichever reference was behind it, it's going to be there. Okay. And that's what you're going to use to generate the return label. Instead of going to orders, a new order batch, and go through the whole manual process, because over here we already have the information, right? I could perfectly say, well, I'm going to create a manual order for this particular client, Gold Enterprises. Is going to be a FedEx order. And then I'm going to use the account for returns, and I'm going to fill a pick order number, customer order number, grab all the ship to address from here, Dorian Gray, 15 Airport Road, blah, 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 do everything manually, okay? This is a process from the past. This shouldn't be used at all. In fact, this module of create a new order batch, it's just for testing purposes most of the time. Well, you don't need to enter packaging information. You don't need all that, okay? What you can do now, instead of going through all this painful and time-consuming and error-prone return label generating process, you can perfectly go to orders history. Why? Because that's where the order actually is. It's in the historical data. You shipped it several weeks ago, so it has to be here. Why will filter status okay, which is orders that were effectively handled and processed and everything else. I'm going to use the pick order number as a key reference to find that order and cherry pick it from my bucket of tens of thousands of orders I processed in the last 2 weeks. I can also use tracking number, and you can support yourself by using the manifest ID if you have it at hand. But typically, you go by pick order number or tracking number. By doing this, what I could find here in just a couple of things, in a couple of steps, providing the reference, clicking here in the search bar, is finding that order. I have the batch number, I got the pick order number. I can open this just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, okay? In fact, I can check more things here. If I click in the edit button in this section, I'm able to preview the information. Oh, is it the same order that we're talking about? Yes, sure. I got the label here. I can check that the address is the same, blah, 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 okay? But what really matters is what we have here. We have an option to create a return. So when you click create a return, you're going to get an option to choose the carrier and the account. Obviously, this carrier and account are the ones or are options available under the client that you're using. Okay, in this case, I'm going to do it through the same account. If you have a separate account for returns, you can perfectly use it this way as well. Okay, you can choose, oh, well, I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use the copy, or I'm going to use this one for international, whatever the case. But you can choose the carrier and the account as you create the return. After you do it, you create it. And what TechSHIP will do is grab all the original data from the original shipment and create a new batch, which is which contains all the information from the origin, okay? But the thing is that the ship to is swapped with the ship from. And as you can see now, ship to address is the warehouse address, and the ship from is the customer's place, okay? And if we go to packaging, we're going to find what should be there, okay? If we need to make any changes here, we can perfectly do so, okay, before we generate the label. It's really up to you. But once you're good to go, what you're gonna do is just process and print, or process and download the file so you can send it to the client, okay? You're going to notice that for the sake of traceability, the new pick order number, if you compare the original one, which is this, it's 1204252R. This is 1204242R. It also says return, and it also includes the date and time here, so you can keep trace of when it was handled. So you got 2024 11/26, which is today's date, and this is the current server time, 2 p.m. 33 minutes 48 seconds. Okay, so as you process and print, I'm going to process right now just that. Let's give it a moment so it goes, reaches FedEx, and requests that shipping label. There we go. We have it now. You can download it by clicking this button, okay? Or you can also download it from here, okay? You can download labels, pre-generated return label, combined, whichever the case. If it comes with a packing slip, you can also do so. But you already have it here, created from the original, swapping the ship from and the ship to, and with providing you the capability of editing the contents if not everything is being returned. Maybe what this person ordered was a whole bunch of things, not just the tablet he wants to return. Maybe he's got a tablet, he's got earphones, he's got, I don't know, a keyboard, a mouse, and something else. And I don't know, and a cell phone cover, right? But you only want to return the tablet. So you can come over here, you can remove the SKUs that are not part of the return, and then you can save, process and print, and handle it in whichever way you like to do so. Again, you can capture the file from here. It's going to be a PDF file, so you can send it via email, and that's it. You're good to go. Okay. By doing it this way, and going back to the statistics and wrapping up our presentation, you're going to be targeting not the 100% of shipments you handle, but just the percentage that is part of the returns, okay? Just the percentage that actually requests for a return, saving a lot of money if you're currently shipping or generating return labels for every shipment you have. Okay. So I hope this is useful for you. Again, I'd like to review the steps of this last process I showed you. You go to orders, orders history. After you're into orders history, you can paste or write the pick order number or the tracking number related to it. And then you click in returns here and just create. If you're going to use the same account, process, and you're good to go. Okay. If you have any doubts, if you forget about this, the recording of this webinar is going to be online, okay, in our YouTube channel. So you can subscribe, you can keep it, you can save it, you can share with your teammates which haven't been able to attend this meeting, for example. You can save it for additional reviews in some other point in time. If you say, well, maybe I'm not focusing right now in returns, but I surely have to sit down in the first, second week of January to see what we do, or halfway through December with all the returns from Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 11/11, so on and so forth. Okay. In order to say, well, now I do need it to review how to do this. Okay. If you have any doubts on how to do it, remember you also have the Need a Hand Assistant. Over here, if you just type return labels, okay, you're going to have a lot of articles related to that, okay? How to print return labels, how to return packages with a different service code, okay? There's a lot of information, some generic, some carrier specific, into guiding you how to do so, okay? You can consume it from here, following the steps on screen as you move forward, okay? For example, this article covers what we just explained. And if there are any specific elements that you need to check, for example, this, how to return packages with different service code, that's fine. You can follow the steps over here. It's going to allow you to go through the steps and guide you into doing so, okay? So, well, just to wrap up, if you have any doubts or questions, feel free to post anything in the webinar chat or the Q&A section. Right now, as I'm wrapping up with the end of the presentation. And okay, good. I do have several questions here. Let's address these. Okay. So it says, first of all, I have a few of you guys asking, how do we get the icon to create a return? You don't have the button in order history. Okay. Good. Good that you pointed out. Return labels. Well, these options over here are related also to user permissions and to techSHIP. Let me show it to you here. To the specifications of your techSHIP package. Just a second, let me show it to you. It's easier this way. So if you have any doubts, this is a great idea to check it here, okay? Now, we have here in this section techSHIP, techSHIP Plus, and techSHIP multi-site, okay? There's a whole section here on return labels, okay? So let's go straight to it. Automation, returns, where is it? Okay, here, okay? So as you can see, every techSHIP package allows you to do both, right? Return labels, print alongside labels, which is what we explained in the beginning, and print return labels on demand. Okay, so as we just saw, search the order, print and download the label. Now, if you don't see these buttons, the user you have does not have the permissions to do so. What you should do is contact your techSHIP administrator. Someone in your organization has this role, and request them to provide you with the admin permissions. If you are, okay, you can reach techSHIP support to make sure that the permissions are properly set for your admin, okay? Since this feature was added some time ago, there could be some users that might not have this permission by default. So take that into account. If you don't have this feature enabled, okay, reach techSHIP support, open in a ticket so the team can review it and they can adjust your settings properly, all right? because again, and this is quite common when features are added as the product grows. Okay, those that did have admin permissions have all the permissions until that specific update, right? Sometimes as part of the process, these new features are automatically enabled for the users, sorry, for the admins, and then the admins can handle the users as they see fit within the organization, okay? But in other cases, the feature might get released and the permission might not be assigned by default, okay? In some cases, it needs to be reviewed in retrospective, okay? So if that's the case, don't worry, just open a support ticket. Our team will be more than glad to do so to enable this. And well, wrapping up, since we don't have any additional questions, I hope you can make the best out of this peak season, that you can be effective, that everything runs smoothly, and of course, since we've spoken about return labels, that your returns are as efficient and painless as possible. All right. So have an awesome peak season. Thank you for joining this webinar, and I'll meet you in the next one. Bye bye.